Hi everyone. In this video, we're going to be making a recipe that I made a whole lot when I was younger. I had an obsession with historical fiction. I had an obsession with American Girl books. And so one of the things that I did, and as I mentioned in my Little House episode a while back, is that I loved cooking things that I read about in the different books that I read. And so I got all the cookbooks that went along with things. So I had the American Girl cookbooks for any of the books that I had. So the very first American Girl that I had the biggest obsession with was Samantha. And this doll is the one that I had growing up. And the outfits didn't come out at the time period that I could actually wear them as a kid. I grew very, very fast. I was pretty tall. And so by the time the dresses and stuff came out, I was a little bit too old or too large size-wise to wear them. And so my entire life, I have wanted an American Girl dress to match my Samantha doll. So recently when Posh Peanut came out with the dresses, I was able to get a dress to match my doll. So I was super, super excited about that. So I'll be wearing that when I make this video. But during this video, I'm going to be making the recipe that I made the most growing up. And I'm not exactly sure why this is the one that I kind of obsessed over the most, but the recipe in the cookbook that I made the most was a cream of carrot soup. And this recipe is basically a pureed carrot soup. It's very comforting. It's very warm. It tastes really good. It's a great way to use up the carrots that are in the bottom of your fridge that you kind of forgot about. But I really, really love the Samantha books, partially because Samantha is the same age as my great-grandmother, BB. And BB lived to be 99 and 11 months. And I remember my dad telling me that he had a conversation with her when she was getting pretty close to the end. And he says, well, don't you want to try to make it to 100? And she said, close enough. And very shortly after that, she passed away. But she was the most incredible woman. She used to say when she would sit down that the way that she would get into her chair was she would just, she walked with a walker. And so she would just turn loose and fall. And she was just one of my favorite people. And just knowing that Samantha was her age, seeing what life looked like for somebody that was her age was just kind of cool. And I love the Samantha books because I love the fact that even though it probably wasn't something that happened very often during that time period, you saw a wealthy little girl interacting with a servant girl that lived in the house next door. And the fact that Samantha immediately saw her just as a friend, just as somebody that she could interact with, that was somebody that was just somebody to be close to and to have a friendship with. And it was just really cool. And I love the way that friendship developed and that they eventually became sisters. And I've got some other videos that I filmed with recipes from this, and I'm going to continue to talk about those stories. But I just love Samantha's story so much because it helped me connect with the history of my grandmother. It helped me just connect with a time period that I was very interested in. I also had other books from the Industrial Revolution that I read about, the fact that kids worked in factories at that point in time. And children working in factories is something that we don't really think about the fact that a lot of the things we see as innovations and so wonderful. In the book, Samantha Learns a Lesson, she wrote a speech about the fact that factories were this big innovation and that they allowed for so much progress. But that progress was built on the backs of people literally being exploited and children being exploited and injured because they were small and could fit into areas that adults could not. And so we need to understand that the progress that this country has made has been on the backs of exploiting a lot of people throughout the entire history of this country, and acknowledging that is super important. And I think that's part of the reason that I've grown up to be the person that I am, is reading these books helped me see the humanity throughout the generations in reading about Addie and reading about Nellie and reading about Felicity and seeing the different ways that American history has its ugly parts, but that those ugly parts can be helped by even children choosing to do the right thing. So let's get cooking. Place a pound of carrots and about enough chicken broth to cover it into a saucepan. If you don't have chicken broth, Vegetable broth would work great, or you can use chicken bouillon and some water. And then you're just going to move that over to the stove, bring that to a boil, and then back down to a simmer, and simmer that until a fork pierces the carrots very easily. And after that comes to a simmer, it takes about 20 minutes for that to happen. Then you are going to drain your carrots, and a strainer with the mesh is going to work a little bit better than a colander for this. And make sure you're draining it over a bowl and not over the sink, because you are going to want to reserve that broth to use later on. Then you are going to add some butter and flour to the empty saucepan that you cook the carrots into, and you want equal amounts of both of those. I use 2 tablespoons of each. 2 tablespoons is going to thicken about 2 cups of broth. And you're going to cook those together to make a roux. This is a pretty standard process in any thickening of sauces. It's pretty standard in any culinary procedure. And this is going to thicken the soup. And I'm moving it on and off the heat just so that I'm not looking to brown this at all. I don't want to brown it or burn it. And so I'm moving it on and off the heat because I do want to cook it until it smells like popcorn. And it's going to be a pretty obvious smell when that happens. We are cooking this until the starchiness goes out of it. If you ever tasted a soup that tastes really floury and starchy, that means they haven't cooked the roux long enough. And so cooking this until it smells like popcorn is going to get that starchy flavor out of there. You can see off to the side, I'm taking the carrots back over to the other side of the kitchen, and then we are going to slowly whisk that chicken broth into there. And this is going to make sure that the roux doesn't get chunky in the process, because otherwise you'll end up with chunks of flour. So we're going to follow a little bit of a different procedure than the cookbook followed. And this is what I did when I was younger as well, but I used a blender instead of a stick blender. So you're going to add the carrots back into the thickened chicken broth. And I just kind of move them around a little bit. And then I use a stick blender to blend the carrots up. And this is where you can be a little bit creative with this. You can get this as smooth or as chunky as you want it to be. If you leave a few chunks in there, it'll be a little bit more of a heartier soup, or you can get it to be a little bit chunkier or a little bit smoother. The original recipe said to mash the carrots with a potato masher and then add them back in. And that's for a couple of reasons, mostly because the cookbook was designed for children, but also because Samantha would not have had a stick blender. That was not a thing back then. And so we are okay with modern conveniences at this point in time. So for the purposes of this recipe, the stick blender works really, really well. So then after you have done that, you're going to add your salt, some cayenne pepper. If you don't have cayenne pepper, regular pepper, white pepper, paprika will work fine. And then salt, cayenne pepper, and half into the pot. And then we're going to take it back to the heat, stir that up, and you just want to heat it until it's heated through. Definitely don't have this on high heat, heat it on medium heat, because that half and half, especially because it's got a little bit of the acidity with the carrots, will curdle if you heat it at too high a temperature. So just heat it until it's barely warmed through. With a soup that has a lot of fat in it, if you heat it up too high, that's why it will burn you a lot more. Broth-based soups you can serve at a higher temperature than cream-based soups. So I hope you enjoyed this video. This is a recipe that I made quite a bit growing up, and it was my first introduction to a roux. Actually, I had never made a roux prior to making this recipe, and it's great with crackers. It's pretty filling, and it's a great way to get some vitamin A into your diet, so I definitely recommend you try it. Also, please check out our 2 levels of membership. You'll have early access to our videos. I will be adding live streams once we get a few more members in, so that you guys will have direct access to conversations with me, to ask direct questions, to get ideas for recipes and things like that. We've got 2 different levels, the 20 quart and the 5 quart. Other than that, thank you so much for watching Mixed Cooking with Merks, and don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Hitting that subscribe button is absolutely free, and it's a great way to help out our channel, and we'll see you next week.